Everybody should stand. If everyone can stand, today's disciplines Day Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj. And Maharaj will read the pranam mantras and we can repeat and Pushpanjali.
Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshudamilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupakadamayam Tatati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuttapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavangscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Anvitam Tam Sajivam Savetam Sarvadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitangscha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shanyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati iti namine Shri Varshabhanavi Devi Dayataya Kripabdaye Krishna Sambandha Vijnana Dayane Prabhave Namaha Madhuryo Jvala Premadhya Shri Rupa Nuga Bhaktidam Shri Gaura Karuna Shakti Vigrahaya Namostute Namaste Gauravani Shri Murtaye Dinatarine Rupanuga Viruddham Apasiddhanta Dvanta Harine Namo Gaura Kishoraya Sakshad Vairagya Murtaye Vipralambara Sambodhe Padambo Jayate Namaha Namo Bhakti Vinodaya Satchit Anandanamine Gaura Shakti Sarupaya Rupanuga Varayate Gaura Virbhava Bhumestvam Yadishta Sajjana Priyaha Vaishnava Sarvabhama Shri Jagannathayate Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahabhadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gauratvashe Namaha Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhaktarupa Svarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Jayatam Surato Pangor Mama Manda Matergati Matsarvasva Padam Bhojo Radha Madana Mohano Divyad Vrindaranya Kalpadrumadaha Srimad Ratnagara Singhasanasto Srimad Radha Srila Govinda Devo Prishtalibhi Sevyamanos Marami Sriman Rasarasarambhi Vangshi Bhatta Tatastataha Karshan Venusvanayar Gopir Gopinatha Shriyestanaha Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Iti Namine Isha Pushpanjali Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Iti Namine Isha Pushpanjali Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada Ki. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Iti Namine Isha Pushpanjali Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada Ki. What? Oh. Yeah, okay. Okay, okay.
Can I grab this?
Okay.
Hare Krishna. We'll do Guru Puja. Please come and face Srila Prabhupada and Bhakti Santa Maharaj. Hare Prabhu will lead, and then others can follow.
Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakti Sadma. Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakti Sadma. Bandhu mui savadhana mate. Bandhu mui savadhana mate. Nahara prasade bhai e bhavaturiya jai. Krishna prapti ho jaha hoite. Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Hitte te Koriya Kya. Arana kori ho mani asha. Shri Guru Charane rati aise utama gati. ये प्रसादि पूरे सर्व आशा. ये प्रसादि पूरे सर्व आशा. चक्षुदान दिलो जय जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से. चक्षुदान दिलो जय जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से. दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशितो. दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशितो. પ્રેમ ભક્તિ યહ હોય તે અવિદ્યા વિનાશયતિ પ્રેમ ભક્તિ યહ હોય તે અવિદ્યા વિનાશયતિ વેદે ગાય હર ચરિતો વેદે ગાય હર ચરિતો શ્રી ગુરુ કરુણા સિંધુ અધમ જનાર બંધો શ્રી ગુરુ કરુણા સિંધુ અધમ જનાર બંધો લોકનાથ લોકેર જીવાના આહ પ્રભુ કોરો દયા દેવો મોરે પદ છયા આહ પ્રભુ કોરો દયા દેવો મોરે પદ છયા એ ભેજા સુશ્રી ભુવાના એ ભેજા સગુ સુપ્રી ભુવાના પ્રભુપાદ પતિત પવના શ્રીલ પ્રભુપાદ લો શરણા જય પ્રભુપાદા 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 શ્રીલ પ્રભુપાદા શ્રીલ પ્રભુપાદા 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 જય પ્રભુપાદા प्रभुपाद 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 जय जय प्रभुपाद श्रील प्रभुपाद की निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल।
Hare Krishna. Somebody has just came in and hasn't had a chance to offer flower petals to His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Saraswati Thakur Maharaj. There's some in the bucket there, so please take advantage of that, okay? Hare Krishna, and please, we're ready for Hare Krishna. That's going to be used by the devotees who are going to get initiated. Can someone please find for this Prabhu a mat? Okay. So all the initiates should come in front of the, in this arena, so they can get their neck beads and garlands, okay?
Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paschatya Desatarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. This is an interesting combination of several things. The disappearance day of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur and initiations, and our Sunday feast, and Gora Arti, and nice combination. In honor of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur's disappearance day, I thought it'd be nice to speak about his life. Here you see the dates of his birth, the dates of his disappearance, and he lived until he was almost 63 years of age, just shy by 1 month and a few days. A very nice introduction to his life was a book written by one of my godbrothers, a ray of Vishnu, Rupa Vilas Prabhu. Very, very devoted and absorbed in Bhakti Siddhanta and Bhaktivinoda Thakur's life, biographies about both of them. If you'd like to get a nice picture of Bhakti Siddhanta's life. The title of the book, A Ray of Vishnu, comes from a prayer that Bhaktivinoda Thakur offered to Krishna because he wanted very much to move forward the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he felt it was very challenging, very difficult, given the circumstances of Kali Yuga and many other things. The weakness or the lack of vitality in the disciplic succession leading up to him as far as reaching the world at large. So he prayed to Krishna for a ray of Vishnu to help him spread the Krishna consciousness movement. And sure enough, Krishna sent. And the two confirmations came to him that this was the answer to his prayer. When Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur was born, the umbilical cord was wrapped around his neck like a Brahmin's thread. So that was a good sign. And in addition, during the time of his grain ceremony, his little boy was placed before the deity of Jagannath because you see his birth date, and about 6 months later was Rath Yatra. And when Rath Yatra cart was passing in front of their house, the cart stopped. And so Bhaktivinoda Thakur's wife, Bhagavati Devi, she had privileges. She was the wife of the High Court judge, so she took the child in her arms in front of Lord Jagannath, placed the child before Lord Jagannath as if to offer the child to Lord Jagannath. And just at that time, a garland fell from the neck of Jagannath and circled around Bimal Prasad. Bimal Prasad. So he took those due as confirmations. A little personal appreciation from me to Bhakti Siddhanta is the very first Krishna conscious literature I received was something written by him. The circumstance was in 1969, one of the Back to Godhead magazines had as its feature article sections from a book written by Bhakti Siddhanta. On the appearance day of Bhakti Siddhanta, he published this book, The Vedanta, Its Morphology and Ontology. So, this is a little detail. I went to college with Borijan Prabhu, and I didn't know about Krishna consciousness, and he knew that I didn't know about Krishna consciousness, but he gave me this Back to Godhead magazine. And Back to Godhead magazine at that time was just black and white, printed on a mimeograph machine. Mimeograph means you just crank the machine and prints things out, and they stapled it up, and that was the Back to Godhead magazine. It was the resource that they had available at the time. So he gave me a copy. I didn't know what it was. But because it came from Borijan, I carried it around with me. It was, my system was I had a clipboard, and I put it on the clipboard, and then a stack of books on top of the magazine. So one day somebody saw the Back to Godhead magazine, and they said, "Oh no, you're not into that, are you?" And I said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, you don't want to be into that." They didn't say what, they just said, "You don't want to be into that." So I was curious, so I started reading the magazine. And just the title of the main article, Prabhupada had said we could print, I found this out later, from his writing, but only small sections, because his writings puzzle people's brains. He said that about himself. I would hear from Bhakti Siddhanta, I read the magazine, and I understood quickly. I had to have a dictionary by my side, even to understand the title. 3 words of the title. I didn't, what's Vedanta, what's morphology, what's ontology, what's the meaning. Then I started reading the article. And, college kid, so I circled words and looked things up and wrote things in the margin. And it took me about 3 hours to finish the article. And I was a pre-med student, so I was used to things that are technical that I didn't quite understand first time. So I wasn't intimidated by the fact that I couldn't understand it. But my experience was that my consciousness was in a place other than anything I've ever experienced before, subjectively. He just lifted me up. So from that first encounter, my respect for Bhakti Siddhanta has been way up there, and subsequently and still today. So I'm very happy to speak about him. There's more stories, but I won't say those more stories just now. Here's a drawing of Bhakti Siddhanta's logo of Gaudiya Math. And I'll break it down. At the top, there's Mahaprabhu. At the bottom, there's Tilak. I don't know what it says. Here's what it says in English. Guru Gaudiya. And as you look at the logo on the left-hand side is the Vidhi mark, and over on the right-hand side is Raga mark. Vidhi means rules and regulations. So rules and regulations of Vidhi is worship of Lakshmi Narayan, which the scripture for which is the Pancharatra. The Panchatrika Vidhi tells how to worship deity, Lakshmi Narayan. So at the bottom is Archana, there's a balance of incense, and that's the Vidhi mark. So Mahaprabhu taught both Vidhi mark and Raga mark. And over on the right side, we see Radha Krishna under a desire tree, the path of Raga. And the scripture is the Bhagavatam, and down below is Kirtan. Now, the easily discernible image is the Mridanga, and the one above that is a printing press. It's in his logo. I mentioned yesterday evening how important, what the kind of importance that Bhakti Siddhanta placed in printed literature. And there it is right in his logo. We've heard this many times. Prabhupada said, because Bhakti Siddhanta said, a mridanga may be heard for a block or two, but a mridanga can be heard, Brihat mridanga can be heard around the world. So it's very fond, and you'll hear some more as we go along about his fondness of printing press. And there's Virya and Aishvarya on the left side, Shri and Jnana on the right side, Vairagya at the bottom, Yasha at the top. These are activities in devotion. That's his logo. If you happen to visit Sridham Mayapur, you'll find just down the street from our ISKCON temple is the headquarters of Bhakti Siddhanta, known today as the Chaitanya Gaudiya Math. And the presiding deity of the Chaitanya Gaudiya Math is pictured here. Gandharvika Giridhari. Gandharva Giridhari has everything to do with Ragamarg. And next to him is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, not Gauratai, but Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And there's a very interesting description of how Gandharvika Giridhari got into the possession of Bhakti Siddhanta. And there's two versions. Don't be surprised when you hear more than one version. One of them is transcribed from a talk of Jananivas. If you don't know who is Jananivas, he's the head pujari for several decades, 5 decades, in Mayapur. So here's his description of how Gandharvika Giridhari got into Bhakti Siddhanta's hands. When the devotees founded the Chaitanya Gaudiya Math, Bhakti Siddhanta went with some devotees to Jaipur to purchase deities. When they went to the shop to see what deities were being sold there, the seller told them, "Over there, your deities are standing in the corner." Bhakti Siddhanta, "How do you know these are my deities?" The shop owner said, "Last night I had a dream. These deities came to me in a dream and said, tomorrow a Mahapurusha will come here and will want to buy deities from you. We want him to serve us, so please take them. I want to give them to you." That's not normal conversation with a shop owner. So Sri Gandharvika Giridhari were installed the same day that Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur accepted sannyas. And his acceptance of sannyas was also pretty unique. He sat before a picture of Gorkishore Das Babaji, said the mantras because he knew the mantras, and he accepted sannyas that way. Pretty uncommon. Now that's Jananivas Prabhu's version, which he tells regularly. I've heard it directly and seen transcriptions. However, there's a pundit at the Chaitanya Math that explains a little differently. From 1905 until 1917, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur engaged in intensive chanting. Notice the number of years is 12 years. Intensive chanting of the holy name daily in his place of bhajan. His place of bhajan is at the Chaitanya Gaudiya Math. There's a room where he would chant the same number of rounds every day that Haridas Thakur would chant every day. It's like unhuman or inhuman or beyond what a normal person could do. For 12 years. He took a vow and he fulfilled the vow. The next year, for the purpose of establishing the Chaitanya Gaudiya Math, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur went with some devotees to Jaipur to bring deities. They went to several shops to see what deities were available. When Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur expressed his attraction for a particular set of Radha Krishna deities, the shopkeeper said that these deities had been sold already, so he could not take them. Bhaktisiddhanta left and returned to his room. That evening, Bhaktisiddhanta had a dream of the same deities instructing him that he needs to return to the same shopkeeper and install the deities in Mayapur. When he told the shopkeeper about the dream, the shopkeeper accepted and said he could take the deity. So, different versions. It's quite okay. But the deities are fantastic. So this is the date of his sannyas initiation. And there's Gandharvika, Giridhari, and Mahaprabhu. So that's his headquarters and his worshipable deities, and a little bit about his early life. We heard about his birth with the umbilical cord, and in 6 months, the garland of Jagannath circled him. Celebrated event was something that happened when he was 3 years old. So think of somebody that you know that's 3 years old. And there was a mango that had not yet been offered to the deity. He was attracted to the mango and he ate the mango. And when his father, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, found out that he had eaten the mango, he mildly said, "Oh, this is not good. You've eaten a mango before it's been offered to the deity. This is not good." So at 3 years old, he made a vow. For the rest of my life, I'll not eat mango. And he upheld it. It's described whenever disciples who didn't know this vow offered him a mango, he would decline, saying, "I'm an offender, I can't accept mango." 3 years old. At the age of 7, his father gave him a kurma deity. Now, kurma, it is said, worship of kurma helps establish stability in one's life, but stability in bhakti life for Bhakti Siddhanta. And at the age of 7, he not only could memorize some slokas, some children are really good at it, he had the entire Bhagavad Gita memorized at 7. And not only he had the Bhagavad Gita memorized, ask some children that have learned slokas, ask them what the meaning is. I don't know. They can give you the English translation sometimes not. But the meaning, Bhakti Siddhanta is written in his biography. Any verse, the entire, chapter 18, text 26, give a 10-minute discussion on that verse, and he could give a 10-minute discussion. He was incredible. When he was 13, his father gave him japa beads and gave him the Mahamantra, not mantra diksha, but gave him Mahamantra and a Nrsimha mantra for protection. Now he grew up like a young Brahmin boy would grow up, and it was expected at that time, as today, that he would go to college. He went to college, and he decided to not complete his college studies, because in Vedic culture, what happens when a young boy completes his college studies? Mom and dad are on his case to get married, and he didn't want to get married. During his high school days, he had established a group with his friends that they would remain brahmachari for life. He was the only one that maintained that vow. But that was, his spirit. And instead, he accepted an occupation from the king of Tripura for 10 years. It wasn't just like fixed in one place for 10 years, but he was his librarian. And it is said that Bhaktisiddhanta read the entire library. And not only he read the entire library, but he had memorized everything that was in the library. Because he had that kind of, some persons have good memory. He had a perfect memory. So later on when he was speaking, he would refer precisely the language of something from some European author in such and such book. Exactly what they said. Chaucer and this one, that one. Making reference. Didactic memory. Quite extraordinary. And of course, even at an early age, he was engaged in writing, because that was a gift that Krishna had given him along with many other gifts. And he very much wanted, because that was how his father trained him, he very much wanted to propagate the message and the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And one of the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Yukta Vairagya. Yukta Vairagya, Yukta means to engage something, and Vairagya means with detachment. It's Nirbandha Krishna Sambandhe, Yukta Vairagya Uchate. It's a definition of Rupa Goswami of what bhakti is. Nirbandha Krishna Sambandhe, etc. Yuktam Vairagya. Utilize things in Krishna's service without attachment, which is in direct contrast to impersonalism. It's just vairagya. So it's a sign of one who wants to get spiritual is to renounce. Lord Chaitanya's teaching is yukta vairagya. So here's a nice photograph. I have a copy on my wall. Here's Bhaktisiddhanta riding in, not only riding in a car, but riding in a convertible at a time when people didn't have cars. And he's riding through the streets of Vrindavan, waving to people, wearing sewn cloth, because that's another no-no. Sannyasis were previously not to wear sewn cloth, not to always walk and not to be carried or have any conveyance other than walking by foot. So to utilize things in Krishna's service was a principle. And he, would be a little challenging sometimes, purposefully, to make a statement. Things to be, then Hari Sambandha Vastuna. Those things that are in relation to Hari. Hari Sambandha Vastuna. If they're given up, it's Pangu Vairagya. This is Rupa Goswami's teaching. So this is Yukta Vairagya, not Pangu Vairagya. Here's a nice example. The first time I visited Vrindavan, 1974, I think it was 1974. Just after the Mayapur festival, the Gaur Purnima festival in Mayapur. We had a Mayapur festival, so we went to Vrindavan. Mayapur Vrindavan festival. So when we were in Vrindavan, we were being taken around. We means the devotees who were there in Vrindavan for that festival. We were taken around by Guru Das. Guru Das was a disciple of Prabhupada who during prior Kartik 73, Prabhupada took the devotees to places in Vrindavan. Those that were with him at that time. So then Guru Das was assigned to guide us, the Mayapur Vrindavan festival group. And one of the places we went to there's a Sri Vaishnava temple, a temple of Ranganath, and inside the Ranganath temple is a very large, spacious place. There was an exhibit that was there from Bhaktisiddhanta's time. And the exhibit was a Yukta Vairagya exhibit. It was technology of the time to depict Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan. And there's a description of what it was. It was topographically depicting. Here's Govardhan Hill. Here's Nandagram. There's Varsana, and there's Krishna, the cowherd boys taking the cows. So how it moved was there was a series of chains underneath. You had to crank the machine, and they would leave Nandagram, the cows, cowherd boys, Krishna, heading for Govardhan Hill. You could hear the chains dragging across the thing. And then they got to Govardhan Hill, and that was it. You had to crank it back. Yukta Vairagya, using technology of the time to remind people of Krishna. The exhibit happened in Vrindavan, but it could be anywhere. And following his divine grace, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Srila Prabhupada followed. He didn't mind. In many cases, he posed for photographs. Here's Bhaktisiddhanta being depicted wearing very simple sannyas attire. She has a book on his lap. And here's another festival where nice fancy garland and turban, and he's all decked out. It was Yukta Vairagya. He would use something according to the circumstance. Here's a little Prabhupada story connected. This is Yukta Vairagya story. In order to teach us Yukta Vairagya, one time Srila Prabhupada was asked, we want to have some nice photographs of you that we can place on the altar. Can we arrange that with you? Prabhupada said yes. And then he was the art director. So Prabhupada dressed like this, that very simple sannyas attire, and he knew enough about photography that in the background was the shade of a very large tree, and Prabhupada stood at the front where there wasn't shade. It was nice light on him, and he stood there with his danda in a very serious look. And they took many photographs. And then Prabhupada said, now let's go inside. And he got sewn cloth and a bright orange, like glittery orange cloth, and a crushed purple velvet backdrop. Maybe you've seen that photograph. And so he went in to change his clothes. This is one of the devotees who was there told me, Prabhupada stood there like this and slowly turned a little pirouette and said, for Krishna we can do anything. And stood there to have the photograph taken. Yukta Vairagya. There's many nice examples of Prabhupada teaching us, as Bhaktisiddhanta was teaching us, Yukta Vairagya. This is a photograph taken of Bhaktisiddhanta at his place in Puri. One of the things he liked to do from time to time, along with his going out into the field and preaching vigorously, he would sometimes like to go to a secluded place in Puri. It's quite secluded, and engage in chanting and writing and preparing himself to go back out into the field. And from time to time he would do like that. Again, we see a nice Bhagavatam or some book on his lap, looking out the window at the scene of Jagannath Puri. Here's the place, or photograph of the place, where Srila Prabhupada, Abhay Charan Day at that time, he met Bhaktisiddhanta. And 100 years ago from now is probably 100 years plus. Here's the ISKCON painting of Bhakti Siddhanta on the rooftop. You know the story. We all know the story. First time Bhakti Siddhanta met Prabhupada, understood that he was English-speaking college student. He was at this time married, had a child, and had his responsibilities. And Bhakti Siddhanta, knowing his circumstance, requested him to go to the English-speaking parts of the world and preach because he was English-speaking. At the end, there was some discussion, and Prabhupada raised a question. Our Srila Prabhupada, Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada raised a question. The question was, at this time Prabhupada was a Gandhi follower, and he said, in today's world, people will not listen to the message of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because he already knew Chaitanya Mahaprabhu from his upbringing with his father. They won't listen to the message of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as long as we're under British rule. So first, get free from British rule, then preach the message of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu around the world. And Bhaktisiddhanta spoke at some length, 10, 15 minutes, defeating him. And Prabhupada's personal explanation was, from my childhood I was always a leader, and I was always engaged in debate, and I always won. But Bhaktisiddhanta defeated me, and I was happy to be defeated because he was right. Essentially, the work of preaching Krishna consciousness is not dependent upon circumstance, transcendental. It's not favorable, unfavorable. Any circumstance is transcendental. So don't wait for favorable. Preach the message of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Do we have an extra microphone? I'm going to play for you a little recording. There's a kirtan. There's kirtan in the background, but there's different sayings or statements of Bhaktisiddhanta that are going to show up on the screen here, if all goes well. Technology. Sometimes it doesn't. Whoops.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna.
Nice, huh? Another nice statement, similar. All those conditioned souls who consider apparent impediments to their happiness are harmful, or the cruelty of the Supreme Lord. See only the first move in the chess game. They are unable to foresee what lies beyond the fourth and the fifth move. Interesting comparison, huh? From the time he accepted sannyas, much of his life was devoted to extensive travel and preaching the message of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That was the request given to him by both Gorkishore Das Babaji Maharaj before he left this world, and his father, Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Both made the request, and he took it up and vigorously preached to demonstrate the magnitude of the message of the Bhagavatam. One time when visiting in Dhaka, he spoke on one verse for 30 days and didn't repeat anything. Amazing, amazing orator of the message of the Bhagavatam. So this is January 1933. In March of 1933, a long-awaited book by one of Srila Prabhupada's Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur's disciples, Professor Nishikant Sanyal from Ravin Shaw College in Orissa had a two-part, I mean, the book is about that thick, probably 400 plus pages, part 1 and 2, to carry with the sannyasis the message of Sri Krishna Chaitanya. That's the title of the book. Very high English, much like Bhaktisiddhanta's high English, very high English. Of course, that means English is not their first language. Bengali is their first language, or Orient is the first language, not English. But English-speaking people need a dictionary to read their writings because it's very high, very high. So when that book was available for his sannyasis to carry with him, in March, the launch was made for the Gaudiya month to go to the west, and the first really small center was opened in London in 1933. There wasn't much progress. The two sannyasis, they also went to Germany. In 2 years, they came back with not grand report, but they tried, and that was their success. And they had Bhaktisiddhanta's support, which was also their success. There were challenges in even threats to his life because he was so vigorous. We discussed this a little bit already in our Light of the Bhagavad. Remember, some of you attended, remember this painting or photograph. Bhaktisiddhanta was conducting a Sankirtan party in downtown Navadvip. And the priests in downtown Navadvip had a lot of resentment to Bhaktisiddhanta, not just because of his preaching, but because he was asserting the same thing that his father asserted, that the birthplace of Mahaprabhu is not in the present city of Navadvip. Many, many reasons without going into that, but it's on the eastern side of the Ganga. And Bhaktisiddhanta, Bhaktivinoda Thakur confirmed where that place was via Gorkishore Das Babaji. And so Bhaktivinoda Thakur built a temple, a little temple, and he instructed his son to build a big one. So he was involved in establishing a big temple that was the birthplace of Mahaprabhu that wasn't in Navadvip, but it was on the eastern side of the Ganga. So what that meant for the priests in Navadvip is they were losing business. They're being hit in the pocketbook. And so they decided they wanted to kill him. So what they did was, these things go on in India, I guess. They offered a bribe to the police. We're going to bump him off. Just look the other way. But the police refused the bribe, which was nice. And instead they informed Bhaktisiddhanta, there's going to be an attempt to take your life. He was fearless. Let's go. So they went, and sure enough, the men who were hired by the Gundas were hired by the Pandas, came out with weapons to kill Bhaktisiddhanta. So the disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta surrounded him. One of the disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta was a Grihastha, and together the two went to some place little ways away. They changed clothes. Bhaktisiddhanta gave his sannyas clothes to the Grihastha. It was the Grihastha's idea. Let's change clothes. And then the Grihastha came out wearing sannyas clothes, and he slipped away. The police knew what was going on. It hit the newspapers, all the newspapers of Navadvip, big write-up on threats on the life of Bhaktisiddhanta, when all he's doing is the Sankirtan of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And so the police went later to Bhaktisiddhanta at his headquarters and asked him if he wanted to press charges. And he declined and said, no, they did night service. I could not have gotten that kind of publicity about Sankirtan movement of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had they not done this. So I'm very grateful. A nice example. He has many, many nice teachings, as you saw, those collections of teachings, little pithy, short statements, powerful, tight statements, sutra-like statements. There's something in the much longer biography written by Bhakti Vikas Maharaj, where he writes, Bhakti Siddhanta explaining, this is important, that Harikatha is the Sarup Shakti of Harinam. Do you know what Sarup Shakti means? No? Would you like to know? Sure. You know what Shakti means? And Sva Rupa, you know what Rupa means? Form, right? Sva Rupa Shakti. It's the spiritual, the Swarup of Krishna's potency, sort of Shakti. So, Hari Katha is the Swarup Shakti of Harinam. So the Nam is Krishna, and then Krishna and Radha. The Swarup Shakti of Krishna is Radha. So we don't just worship Krishna alone, we worship Krishna with his Swarup Shakti. So similarly, Kirtan should be accompanied with Harikatha, because Harikatha is the Swarup Shakti of Harinam. And it's not proper. We don't worship Krishna alone, we worship Krishna with Radha. So we don't have Kirtan alone, we have Kirtan with Harikatha. That's his teaching. Very nice, isn't it? So in this glorification of, like in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Shikshastaka, it doesn't exclude what Bhakti Siddhanta is expressing here. It's included. Like, historically, before Mahaprabhu's time, the worship of Krishna was without a deity of Radha by his side. The Gaudiya, the main deities of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Madan Mohan, Govindaji, and Gopinath, they were initially worshipped without Radha. But the followers of Mahaprabhu, they established Radha by the side of Krishna. So we also, as followers, following Bhakti Siddhanta, we don't just chant, we chant and hear Hari Katha or Bhagavad Katha, or topics about Krishna, along with our kirtan. Here's something that Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur wrote in relation to this particular message from Chaitanya Bhagavat. The characteristics of Prahlad are described in the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. The characteristics of Dhruva are described in the 4th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Sri Gadadhar Pandit, pictured here in this painting, he's reciting Bhagavatam, was the speaker of Srimad Bhagavatam, and Sri Gaurasundar was the listener. He, Gaurasundar, attentively listened, heard topics of Prahlad and Dhruva, cultivation of devotional service from the mouth of Gadadhar hundreds of times. Of course, lots of mention of Kirtan and substantial mention of Harikatha as well. Here's a photograph of Srila Prabhupada meeting with the governor of Bengal at the time during British rule, when Bhakti Siddhanta was at Chaitanya Gaudiya Math. And his name is John Anderson. There we go, John Anderson. So John Anderson, the governor, came with requested some time with Bhakti Siddhanta. And Bhakti Siddhanta, of course, agreed. And before the governor came, there was no way to get to the Gaudiya Math, Chaitanya Gaudiya Math temple, except this little path. The little path, in order for the governor to come visit him, he had to pave the path and make it a road. He came by boat to the Ghat and built a road so that, or established a proper road so he could come visit Bhakti Siddhanta. And if you notice, I don't think this is Photoshop, Bhakti Siddhanta is wearing white because he was Yukta Vairagya. He was ready to do what was needed. And rather than confuse the governor, he just wore white because the governor's used to seeing Vaishnavas wearing white. So he wore white. And they had discussions on many topics. And the governor was very pleased. It was just enchanté, just getting to, get him to understand the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. If I understand correctly, two things. One was the governor established a post office, the birthplace of Mahaprabhu, just down the street from the main temple, from the Chaitanya Gaudiya Math. In other words, it was like government now confirms the birthplace of Mahaprabhu is on the eastern side of the Ganga, not over there in Navadvip. So still today, there's a post office, the birthplace of Mahaprabhu, post office. You follow? That was one of the missions in this meeting. There was another mission that Bhakti Siddhanta later explained. He said, I never would have been able to build a road, but having the governor come, he built a road. So now every day, consider, every day, bullock carts, 2 or 3 bullock carts of paper came to the Chaitanya Gaudiya Math because they had printing presses, more than one, running all the time, day and night. And then the bullock carts would go back, loaded up with books, bound because they had the binder and a printer. So it was very helpful for Bhakti Siddhanta's mission to have the governor visit for those two purposes. Brilliant, huh? Again, here's Gandharvika Giridhari. And those of you that have visited Mayapur and have visited Chaitanya Gaudiya Math, you'll take notice the temple is not gigantic, where the deity house is modest. But when I visited in 1974, there on the corners of the temple, there are little murtis of each of the 4 sampradaya acharyas. You with me? There's 4 sampradayas. And each of those 4 sampradayas has a certain Vaishnava teaching with emphasis. So there's a book, one of Bhakti Siddhanta's books, is The 4 Sampradayas. It's available, it's translated, it's very readable. And he gives details and details and details and details and details and details about the disciplic line and the main emphasis and the distinctions between them and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's writings. One of his main missions was to help unite the 4 sampradaya groups. He was not in favor of secularism or groupism. He wanted recognize the distinctions, that's fine. This is like this, and that's like that, and the other has its characteristics, that's fine. What's unifying for all is the worship of this personality of Godhead, because all Vaishnavas do that. And there are other practices that go along, teachings and practices that go along. So today, when you go, when I went, 1974, the murtis were little. Now they're much bigger and, probably more nicely formed than what I saw so many years ago. But it's there because it was a major thrust of Bhakti Siddhanta's work, is to bring the unity. I learned this long ago, and here we go, going down the list. Bhakti Siddhanta said, or wrote, that Mahaprabhu accepted 2 main precepts from each of the 4 sampradayas. So 4 times 2 is 8, right? So 8 teachings that were incorporated by Mahaprabhu. And now, of course, his teachings are his teachings, but they're embracing the 4 sampradayas, although he came from one of them. So here's Madhva's teachings that he embraced. Madhva completely defeated Mayavad philosophy and the service of the deity of Krishna. Now in Udupi there's no Radha, but the service of the deity of Krishna, Udupi Krishna, accepting the deity as an eternal spiritual being. Very important in Madhva's teachings. Ramanuja's teachings, the concept of bhakti unpolluted by karma and gyan, essential for Lord Chaitanya's teachings as well. And Vaishnava Seva. Rupa Goswami presents this. One of the 5 principal teachings is Vaishnava Seva. Vishnu Swami, Ragamarg, very prominent in Vishnu Swami's sampradaya, and exclusive dependence on Krishna, an essential part of Lord Chaitanya's teachings. In Nimbarka Sampradaya, the necessity of taking shelter of Radha, very strong in the Nimbarka Sampradaya, and the high esteem of the gopis' love for Krishna, essential teaching of Mahaprabhu. So he emphasized the similarities uniting the 4, and he was interested in having the groups appreciate the 4. Those of you that want to hold up your camera, or I'll give you a copy of this. How's that? Thank you. A very important instruction came to Srila Prabhupada. This is a painting of a visit they made together during the Brajmandal Parikram. They're at Radhakund, going around Radhakund, and Bhakti Siddhanta was instructing Srila Prabhupada something that went deeply into his heart. And that was, if you ever get money, print books. Now Prabhupada, as a sannyasi, didn't have money initially, but eventually had money, and he used it, of course, for building temples. But very important was printing books. Very important was printing books. I mean, I could go on about how Prabhupada took that instruction to heart, but we're focusing on Bhakti Siddhanta. So this was an instruction that occurred to him at Radhakund, or given to Prabhupada. Some part of Bhakti Siddhanta's life was also spent at Radhakund. There's his Pushpa Samadhi of him and Bhaktivinoda Thakur. This is the sitting place, a very interesting chair where Bhakti Siddhanta would sit, and had a little bed where he would take rest, a walking cane, and his shoes. This is the temple at Radhakund called Radha Kunjabihari. At Radhakund, it shows a little map of where the place is, just a little bit of a distance off from Radhakund. Here's the deities in the wintertime, and in a moment the image, I think, is going to get bigger. No. Radhakunja Bihari. And we're almost finished. A nice statement I like from Bhakti Siddhanta, from Chaitanya Bhagavat. God is for the shelter of all. He sends many obstacles and inconveniences to those who wish for shelter under him in order to test the ardor and steadiness. Now, last but not least, this is just a little collection of somebody that I know, a friend, that really likes a particular letter that Bhakti Siddhanta wrote. It's broken into pieces. I am overjoyed to hear that your enthusiasm for chanting is increasing. As our contaminations are removed by chanting, the Lord's form, qualities, and pastimes will be revealed to us in the holy name. There is no point in making a separate endeavor to artificially remember the Lord's form, qualities, and pastimes. The Lord and his name are one and the same. This will be understood clearly when the coverings in your heart are removed. By chanting without offenses, you will personally realize that all perfections come from the holy name. Through chanting, the distinction that exists between the self and the gross and subtle bodies is gradually effaced. What does effaced means? Removed. Just like, for example, supposing you've seen a really old coin. So when they make new coins, the images on the coin of somebody or the words or something is really clear. But when coins rub together, all of that becomes effaced. So the chanting effaces the identification with the body, gross and subtle. And instead, one realizes one's own spiritual form. Once aware of the spiritual body, as one continues to chant, one sees the transcendental nature of the Lord's form. This is a letter. Only the holy name reveals the spiritual form of the living being and then causes him to be attracted to Krishna's form. Only the holy name reveals the spiritual qualities of the living being and then causes him to be attracted to Krishna's qualities. Pretty helpful, huh? Only the holy name reveals the spiritual activities of the living being and then causes him to be attracted to Krishna's pastimes. So it's name, form, qualities, pastimes. By service to the holy name, we do not mean only the chanting of the holy name. It also includes the other duties of the chanter. If we serve the holy name with body, mind, and soul, then the direction of that service spontaneously manifests like the sun in the clear sky of the chanter's heart. What is the nature of the holy name? Eventually, all these understandings spontaneously appear in the heart of one who chants the holy name. The true nature of Harinam is revealed by listening to, reading, and studying the scriptures. It is unnecessary to write anything further on this subject. All these things will be revealed to you through chanting. So this is a very appropriate message for our event today. I thought I would end with this. Very powerful, very transcendental, and absolutely true. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. And this is Prabhupada on his disappearance day. And here's a photograph, the final slide. This is published from an article in a newspaper on his disappearance day. So that ends the discussion on Bhakti Siddhanta, and we'll move now to the initiation part. The message that I might have wanted to share has been shared by this nice letter that Prabhupada wrote. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada wrote to someone. Doesn't say who the someone was. Everything is in the holy name. This is a ceremony for the initiation into the chanting of the holy name. And something that I like to do, I forgot. Something I like to do on initiation events is chant Brahma Samhita together. Now, Do you have some way of showing Brahma Samhita? You have some way of showing it?
Yes, ready.
You're ready. Should I give you this? I should have started with this before the class, but we're too late now. So I have a hard copy, and we'll chant together, and get ready. I like to chant swiftly, so chant at my pace, or chant at my pace. There's no or. Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchit Ananda Vigraha Anadir Adir Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam Tamini Prakada Sadma Sukalpa Vriksha Laksha Vratesu Sarvira Vipalayantam Lakshmi Sahasra Shata Sambrama Sevyamanam Govinda Hari Purushandamaham Bhajami Vedam Kadvantamaravindya Dalayataksam Bharavatam Samasipam Buddha Sundarangam Kandharpakoti Kamaniya Vishesha Shobham Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Aloga Chandrakala Sadvanamaya Vankshi Ratnangadam Pranaya Kedika Lavinasam Shamam Tribangalalitam Niyata Prakasham Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Yasya Sakalendriya Vrittimanti Pashanti Panti Kalayanti Chiram Jaganti Vigrahasya Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Nadi Manantarupam Atyam Puranam Purusham Navayovanam Cha Vedesha Durlabam Adurlabam Atma Bhakta Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Pantastu Koti Shatabatsara Sampragamyo Vayoratapi Manaso Muni Pungavanam Sopyasti Yadvapada Sinya Vachincha Tattve Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ekopya Saurachayatam Jagadanda Koti Yat Shaktirasti Jagadanda Chayayadantaha Andantarasta Paramanu Chayantarastam Govindamadi Purusham Maham Bhajami Yad Bhava Bhava Tadiyoma Najasta Taiva Sampratya Rupa Mahamachanayana Bhusha Suktaryam Eva Nigama Pratataisnavanti Govindamadi Purusham Maham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Pratibhavitabhis Tabirya Eva Nijarupataya Kalabhihi Goloka Eva Navisadya Kilatma Bhutto Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Premanjanacharita Bhakti Vidoshanena Satta Sadeva Hridayeshu Vidokayanti Yachama Sundarma Chintayanasarupam Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ramadi Bhutta Shukalani Amena Tishtan Nanavatara Makarod Bhuvaneshu Kinto Krishna Swayam Samabhavat Paramakpumanyo Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yasya Prabha Prabhavato Jagadanta Koti Koti Svashesha Vasadani Vibhoti Bhinnam Tad Brahma Niskalam Anantam Ashesha Bhotam Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ayahi Yasya Jagadanda Shatani Sukte Kaigunya Tadvataya Veda Vitaya Mana Sattva-valambi Parasattvam Vishuddha Sattvam Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Datamati Manakso Yat Praninam Panipalam Smarutamo Leelayatenu Bhavanani Jagatya Jasram Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Golokanani Nijadamni Tanecha Tasya Devi Mahesha Haridama Suteshu Teshu Teke Prabhava Nitayami Hitashayena Govindamadi Purusham Bhajami. Shristi Sati Pradaya Sadhana Shakti Chaye Vyasya Bhuvanani Vibharati Durga Yasha Nurupama Vyasya Tates Tatesha Govindamadi Purusham Bhajami. Kshiram Yataditi Vikara Vishesha Yoga Sanjayate Jahita Pratagasti Heto Yaksam Bhutama Pitata Paiti Karyad Govindamadi Purusham Bhajami. Dipashake Prashantara Abhyupetya Dipayate Vrita Hetu Samana Dharma Yastatra Geva Hitya Vishnu Taya Vibhati Govindamadi Purusham Bhajami. Yakaranarnava Jale Bhajati Sma Yoga Nidramananda Jagadanda Saroma Kupaha Adhara Shakti Mabalamya Param Sumurtim Govindamadi Purusham Bhajami. Yasyaika Nishvasata Kalamatavalambya Jivanti Loma Viraja Jagadandanata Vishnur Mahasayakshakalami Shesho Govindamadi Purusham Bhajami. Bhasmanyatang Svasakalesha Nijesha Teja Sviyam Kiyat Prakadiyata Vitadvadatra Ramanya Yesha Jagadanda Vidhana Karta Govindamadi Purusham Bhajami. Pallava Yogam Viridhaya Kumbha Vanve Pranama Samaye Sakanadi Raja Vikham Vihamtam Adavasya Jagatrayasya Govindamadi Purusham Bhajami. Agnir Mahita Amba Marudnishasya Kanastatama Manasita Jagatrayani Yasmad Bhavanti Vibhavanti Vishanti Yamcha Govindamadi Purusham Bhajami. Yach Chakshuresa Savita Sakala Grahanam Raja Samasta Murtha Yasya Gaya Brahmati Samrita Kala Chakro Govindamadi Purusham Bhajami. Dharma Tapapa Yachaya Shrutayasta Pakshi Rama Dikita Pataka Vadayasta Jiva Yata Prakata Prabhava Govindamadi Purusham Bhajami. Yatvindra Gopamata Vindra Mahosva Karma Bandhan Rupa Padabhaja Bhajanoti Karmani Nirta Hita Kintu Bhakti Bhaja Govindamadi Purusham Bhajami. Yam Krodha Kama Sahaja Pranayadi Viti Vatsalya Moha Gora Gora Vasevya Bhavai Satyinta Satsashim Ganamaparite Govindamadi Purusham Bhajami. Shriya Kanta Kanta Parama Purusha Kalpataravo Droma Bhumis Chintamani Ganamayi Toyam Amritam Katakanam Natyam Ganamam Api Vangshi Priyasaki Chidanandam Jyoti Param Apitad Asvadyam Apicha Jayataksharadi Shavati Surabi Vyasya Sumahan Dimeshad Yakyova Vrajati Nahi Yatrapi Samaya Vaje Shveta Dripam Tamaham Iha Golokamitiyam Vedanta Steshanta Shati Virala Charakati Paye Ishara Parama Krishna Satchit Ananda Vigraha Anadir Adir Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam. Ecstatic. Glorification of Govinda, the primeval Lord, from so many different perspectives. Wonderful, wonderful sound vibration. Creating auspiciousness. So the message for this initiation into the chanting of the holy name, Bhakti Siddhanta already gave. I think I'll make a copy of this also available, along with the one that has the 8 principles that Bhakti Siddhanta indicates that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted from the 4 sampradayas. So particularly our initiates will be able to look over this nice composition. Maybe I won't show the all the images with the PowerPoint, but just the text. I'll do that, just the text of the letter. And these 2 times 4 is 8 points from the 4 sampradayas. There's the instruction for the initiates. We already read it, recited it, and now you can go back from time to time and examine. You can examine the instruction of Bhakti Siddhanta. You can take it as instruction for yourselves, the 3 initiates. How are we doing with time? It's 1:15. Okay. Where's the beads? Somebody has the beads. There they are. So all 3 of you come at once because of time. You 3 initiates, go before Srila Prabhupada, offer your obeisances before Prabhupada, and then you can come over here. I'm listening. Yes.
Om Sana Bhavanto Sana Bhavanto Sana Vidyakara Tejasvino Itamadhanam Vidisavya Om Shanti Om Shanti Om Shanti Namo Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shanti Om Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Om Purandama Devasaram Purandho Parasadya Purandha Vishubhutani Jata Vedamuna Imam Om Anchakana Pranyaham Bhavanto Bhavanto Panyaham Om Advata Vishupanitam Vese Brahma Putrika Tamase Samsate Notyavari Sishu Matra Kichaya Sarvadana Sukre Patma Vishudina Sukre Punyavadaha Om Astikana Swasti Bhavanto Om Swasti Om Swasti Om Swasti Om Swasti Nendra Vitrava Swasti Na Pustavi Sivada Swasti Natraksha Nitrin Swasti Nabrahma Swasti Om Om Astikana Nityam Bhavanto Om Nityatam Om Nityatam Om Nityatam
You have to go sit down.
Om Nityam Samasana Bhavanto Sarthi Piyatyam Yastra Papamadu Swasti Budayasa Astinyo Kamopra Om Swasti Puvina Swasti Natsanantu Swasti Na Deva Vishnudatu Swasti Naya Narvai Swasti Na Padmanava Purushottama Datu Swasti Na Vishwaksara Vishwasara Swasti Nautike Saridatu Swasti Navina Tahri Swasti Nandana Sutta Bhagavata Datu Om Swasti Swasti Sumavargi Swasti Siddhi Sasthanam Karkarve Datu Om Shanti Om Shanti Om Shanti Om Tara Vishnu Param Param Sarapasi Surya Divya Suradam Tati Patu Vandava Jagar Vamsham Samuchi Vishnu Parampadam Om Tara Vishnu Param Param Sarapasi Surya Divya Suradam Tati Patu Vandava Jagar Vamsham Samuchi Vishnu Parampadam Om Tara Vishnu Param Param Sarapasi Surya Divya Suradam Tati Patu Vandava Jagar Vamsham Samuchi Vishnu Parampadam Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasadi Gaura Bhakta
Let me know when I can have them take their vows. Can we pause for just a moment? Is that okay? Is that a good spot to pause? Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we have 2 senior citizens here, so it's not going to be easy for them to do everything, but you can just from a sitting position. You understand what I'm saying? Yes? Okay. Do you need to translate anything for either of them? You can, okay, if needed. We're just going to ask you to take vows. Okay, but let me say the question. 3 questions. How many rounds you'll chant every day on your beads? 16 minimum. And the 4 rules that you'll follow. Say in your own language if you want. Yeah, what are they? Say them. No gambling. That's easy. How old are you? How many? 88? 80. Back home, back to Godhead. And the third, you'll continue to follow Srila Prabhupada's teachings for the balance of your life. Yes? Very good. Your initiated name is Shatrugna Das. No explanation required. One of Lord Ramachandra's brothers. Very exalted soul, Lord Shatrugna Das. Mataji, same. English is okay? Okay. How many rounds you'll chant every day on your beads? 15 rounds minimum. Very good. The 4 rules that you'll continue to follow as you've been doing for so many years, I'm sure. What are the 4 rules? Intoxication. No intoxication. You got everybody laughing. That's really good. No intoxication. What's the other ones? No gambling. No gambling. No illicit sex. And? No meat eating. No onions and garlic also, right? Okay, good. And like your good husband, you'll continue following Srila Prabhupada's teachings. Very good. Can you stand? Can you help her come forward? Your initiated name, Tungi Devi Dasi. Unlike your good husband, this requires, who's Tungi? Tungi, there's 2 meanings. One of the meanings is Mother Jasoda had a sister-in-law. And one of Mother Jasoda's sister-in-laws is Tunga. Tungi. And Radharani had a pet calf. And her name was Tungi. So, Tungi. Yasoda and Radha. You can think of them when you hear your name. You ready? Okay. Some of you don't know this nice Mataji. We got to know each other from Chicago. Shortly after we got to know each other in Chicago, her circumstance of life shifted her to California, and she's been very much connected with the discussion group that Paramakruna conducts, and she's well situated in her Krishna consciousness as a result. Very, very enthusiastic, very sincere. So your vows, how many rounds you chant on your beads daily?
16 days.
Very good. And the rules that you follow?
No meat eating, no intoxication, no gambling, no suicide.
Okay. And you continue as you've been doing for the rest of your life. They're way ahead of you, but you're much younger than they are. So it's a stronger vow. Follow Prabhupada's teachings for the rest of your life. Very good. Your initiated name is Shama Leela Devidasi. So we're ready to resume the mantras. Are you ready for the mantras? Do you have a microphone? Here's a microphone.
Okay. Thank you.
Congratulations.
हरिबोल हाथे फ्लावर एक फ्लावर एक और जल एक फ्लावर एक जल संकल्प হবে না হাতে একটু জল আর ফ্লাওয়ার ओम गोविंद 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 ओम तत्सदाद्य ब्राह्मण द्वितीय प्रारब्धे श्री श्वेतवरा कल्पे वैवस्वत समनुस्तरे अष्टविंशति कलियुगस्य प्रथम संध्यायां ब्राह्मण विंशति वर्तमानायां पंचत्रिश षोडश गौराब्धे दक्षिणायने हेमंत ऋतो मार्गशीर्ष मासो कृष्ण पक्ष विचरासित भास्करः चतुर्थी तिथौ रविवार न्यूतानम पुष्य नक्षत्र संयुक्तायम भूमंडले जम्बू द्वीपे भारत वर्षे भारत खंडे मेघभूत सुमरे दक्षिण लवणावृत कोणे गंगयाः पूर्व भागे श्री मायपुर धामनी श्री हिलस्वर धामनी श्री विग्रह ब्राह्मण वैष्णवानि सन्निधौ श्री श्री निताय सचिनंदन राधा माधव श्री श्री नृसिंह पंचतत्व प्रीत्यार्थम एवं गुण विशेष विशिष्टायम अस्मिन् शुभ दिवसे। आप लोग का नाम बताइए, नाम क्या? नया नाम श्यामलीला दासी अच्युतगत्रस्य तुंगी देवी दासी अच्युतगत्रस्य शत्रुघ्न दास अच्युतगत्रस्य दीक्षा प्राप्ति कार्य है सर्वाद विघ्न खंडनम श्री कृष्ण प्रीति चरण काम सर्वरोग विनाशनम सर्वकोंटकनाशनम सर्वोपद्रवनाशनम ओम करिष्ये ओम तद विष्णु परमं पदम सदा पश्यन्ति सूर्यादिव्य चक्षुरा तदम तद्विपास विपन्नाव जाग्रवंशं संजय विष्णु परमं पदम। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। गोटे धूपर आरती करियो। ओम वैष्णवाग्नि या गच्छ या तिष्ठ ये सन्निधि ये सन्निरुद्धस्य य सन्मुखव क्लीं हृदयानम कृष्णाय श्रेष्ठ स्वाहा गोविंदाय शिखाय भूषट गोपीजन कवचाय हुम बलवाय नेत्राय भूषट स्वाहा मस्त्राय पटियामृत कुरिया परमे करो। ओम एतगंध पुष्प श्री वैष्णवाग्नि या करो। ओम कृष्णानंद मुकुंद माधव हरे गोविंद वंशी मुख श्री गोपीजन वल्लभ ब्रज श्रुति प्रिय भक्त प्रेम से क्रियाफल रसनानंद के दिनाहृति राधा कांत द्रुम संस्कृति हिरण्य ओम तद विष्णु परमं पदम सदा पश्यन्ति सूर्य दिव्य चक्षुरातम तद्विपास विपन्नाभ जागर वंशं विष्णु पदम हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे श्रुति जी ओम भौर्भुव स्वाहा इदं विष्णवेदं नमः स्वाहा ओम भूर्भुव स्वाहा इदम् अच्युतायदं नमः स्वाहा ओम स्वाहा इदं नारायणं नमः स्वाहा ओम भूर्भुव स्वाहा इदम् अनन्तायदं नमः स्वाहा ओम अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः स्वाहा इदं गुरुवेदं नमः ओम श्री चैतन्य मनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपकधामायं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं स्वाहा इदं रसाचार्याय नमः ओम वन्दे अहं श्रीगुरः श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरुं वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सागरघुनाथं नित्यं तं सञ्जीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्ण चैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादं सागरललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितं स्वाहा इदं गुरु गौरांगाय राधाकृष्णाय सर्व वैष्णव तत्त्ववेदं नमः ओम नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्ण पृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी निति नामिने स्वाहा इदं प्रतिशताचार्याय नमः ओम नमस्ते सारस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्योदेशतारिणे स्वाहा इदं संस्थापकाचार्याय नमः ओम नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्ण पृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती इति नामिने स्वाहा इदं परम गुरुवेदं नमः ओम श्री वार्षवानवि देवी द्वैताय कृपाब्धे कृष्ण संबंध विज्ञान दायिनी प्रभवे नमः स्वाहा इदं परमे गुरुवेदं नमः ओम आविर्योल प्रेमाढ्य श्री रूपानुग भक्तिद श्री गौर करुणा शक्ति विग्रहाय नमस्तुते स्वाहा इदं परम गुरुवेदं नमः ओम नमस्ते गौरवाणी श्रीमूर्ति दिनतारिणे श्री रूपानुग विरुद्धापप सिद्धांत धंतारिणे स्वाहा इदं परम गुरुवेदं नमः ओम नमो गौरकिशराय साक्षाद वैराग्यमूर्तये विप्रलंबर संबोध पादं भुजायते नमः स्वाहा इदं परम गुरुवेदं नमः ओम नमो भक्ति विनोदाय सच्चिदानंद नामिने श्री गौर शक्ति स्वरूपाय रूपानुगवरायते स्वाहा इदं महागुरुवेदं नमः ओम गौराविर्भाव भूमिस्थं निर्दिष्टं स्वजनं प्रिय वैष्णव सार्वभौम श्री जगन्नाथ युते नमः स्वाहा इदं परमेष्टि गुरुवेदं नमः ओम वंशकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य च पतितानं पावनेभ्य वैष्णवेभ्य नमो नमः स्वाहा इदं सर्व वैष्णवेभ्य इदं नमः ओम नमः महावदन्याय कृष्ण प्रेम प्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्ण चैतन्य नाम्ने गौरतिसे नमः स्वाहा इदं गुरुगौराय इदं नमः ओम पंचतत्मात्मकं कृष्ण भक्त रूप स्वरूपकं भक्तावतारं भक्ताक्षं नमामि भक्ति शक्तिकं स्वाहा इदं पंचतत्वाय इदं नमः ओम हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधो जगत्पते गोपीशु गोपिकाकांत राधाकांत नमस्तुते स्वाहा इदं कृष्णाय इदं नमः ओम जयतं श्रोतो पंगर मम मंदमत गते मत्सर्वस पदं भुज राधा मदनमानो स्वाहा इदं संवदादिदेव मदनमानाय इदं इदं नमः ओम दिव्यत वृंदारण्य कल्पद्रुमादः श्रीमद् रत्नाकर सिंहासनस्थो श्रीमद् राधा श्रील गोविंद देव पृष्ठलिभ्य सबं मनस्मरामि स्वाहा इदम अभिदायति गोविंदाय इदं नमः ओम श्रीमन् रासर सारंभे वंशी बटतट सीता कर्षण वेणु सन्निर्गोपी गोपीनाथ ये स्तुने स्वाहा इदं प्रयोजनाय गोपीनाथाय इदं नमः ओम तप्त कंचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरि प्रिये स्वाहा इदं राधिकाय इदं नमः ओम वार्षभानवि गांधर्वी के कार्तिकी देवी श्री कृष्ण प्रिय सर्वेश्वरी क्लीं श्री वृंदावन सेवाधिकारी प्रदे श्री हरि श्री राधिकाय स्वाहा इदं राधिकाय इदं नमः जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिव सादि गौर भक्त वृंद इदं चैतन्य कृष्णाय इदं नमः स्वाहा जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिव सादि गौर भक्त वृंद इदं पंचतत्वाय इदं नमः स्वाहा जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिव सादि गौर भक्त वृंद स्वाहा इदं पंचतत्वाय इदं नमः हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे स्वाहा इदं कृष्णाय इदं नमः हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे स्वाहा इदं कृष्णाय इदं नमः हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे स्वाहा इदं कृष्णाय इदं नमः ओम हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे स्वाहा इदं कृष्णाय इदं नमः ओम हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे स्वाहा इदं कृष्णाय इदं नमः ओम हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे स्वाहा इदं कृष्णाय इदं नमः ओम भोर्भुव स्वाहा इदं विष्णवे इदं नमः ओम भोर्भुव स्वाहा इदं अच्युताय इदं नमः ओम स्वस्वाहा इदं नारायणाय इदं नमः ओम भोर्भुव स्वाहा इदं अनंताय इदं नमः ओके सब लोग खड़ा हो जाए थोड़ा तो सभी लोग खड़ा हो जाए आप लोग जी महाराज का सिर को थोड़ा स्पर्श कर लीजिए
क्या करना
महाराज जी का सिर को ऐसे स्पर्श कर लीजिए
इससे
हाँ और फिर उन लोगों सबको स्पर्श
सही
हाँ ऐसे 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 कर ଆପଣ ଏଟା ଧରନ୍ତୁ
ପୂର୍ଣ୍ଣାହୁତି
ପୂର୍ଣ୍ଣାହୁତି
ଏଇଟା ତବେ ନା
ସେଟାକୁ ଆର ଉପରେ ରଖନ୍ତୁ ଘିଅ ଢାଳନ୍ତୁ ଆର ଉପରେ ପୂର୍ଣ୍ଣାହୁତି ହରି ବୋଲ এখানে আছে বাস একটা বেশি না पूर्णावती प्लेट हरे ओम पूर्णमहो यस्य विष्णवे यस्मै विष्णुयाति स्वभारमस्य ददाति विष्णुभारं वृणे यस्य सभायं लोकः। ओम नमः ब्रह्मण्य देवाय गो ब्रह्मण्य हिताय च जगद्धिताय कृष्णाय गोविन्दाय नमः नमः। नमः ब्रह्मण्य देवाय गो ब्रह्मण्य हिताय च जगद्धिताय कृष्णाय गोविन्दाय नमः नमः। नमो ब्रह्मण्य देवाय गो ब्रह्मण्य हिताय च जगद्धिताय कृष्णाय गोविन्दाय नमः नमः। स्वाहा इदं कृष्णाय इदं नमः। इन लोगों का सिर स्पर्श कीजिए। ओम पूर्णमद पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते। ओम शांति ओम शांति ओम शांति। सिर्फ फ्रूट्स देना है। फ्रूट्स हाँ एक एक फ्रूट्स बोलिए फिर फ्रूट आप लोग खुद दे दीजिए। हाँ
ये देना है
पूरे सवाल बता दिए। शांति गानो। ओम ध्याय शांति अंतरिक्ष शांति पृथ्वी शांति ओम आप शांति वायु शांति तेज शांति औषध शांति लोक शांति ब्रह्मण शांति वैष्णव शांति शांतिरस्तु भूतरस्तु। ओम शांति ओम शांति ओम शांति। ओम प्रणाम कीजिए। ओम अंगहीन क्रियाहीनम विद्धिहीनं च तद्भवेत् अस्तु तत्सर्वं यच्छिद्रं कृष्ण कृष्ण प्रसादते यत्किंचित् वैगुण्यं जात तद्स्पृशमानयं श्रीकृष्ण स्मरणं करोमि। जय श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण। सब प्रणाम कीजिए और परिक्रमा 4 बार करना है। कीर्तन स्टार्ट कर दीजिए। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण कृष्ण कृष्ण।
Our first time activity also 3 rounds. There is Gaudiya first time outside also 4 rounds.
Oh, and how many tutus Maharani usually?
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Hare
One piece. Others don't have other tea. Take more.
Krishna Krishna
Tea parikrama, don't tea. Don't take. No.
Hare Rama Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Hare
टाइम लग दी कम करा दियो टाइम
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Hare
में ना हाथ में हम लोग को इंडिया में तो रहता है ना गजरा गजरा आई वांट टू गजरा पुट द हाथ में देगा ना और बहुत चमकेगा ये नहीं ना इसलिए मैं खाली पगड़ी भी खाली घुमाया ऐसे सब
राम 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 हरे Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna
Hare Krishna Mata ji
Every time I see Sarvan is different. Every time it's different.
अब जो लेके आया था ना जो गया
हाँ मैं देखा
I know I want color इधर otherwise so many dresses I want color also I look like also
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare